start in just 1 second, please. We're gonna go ahead and call the work session to order. Appreciate everybody being here tonight, this afternoon. Okay, let's start with action items. We'll go straight to personnel. Ms. Bill is here tonight. Are there any additions this afternoon, like this afternoon?
They're all in bold, but there were just a few.
Okay. Y'all take a few minutes to look over the personnel actions.
Ms. Bill, on item 29, in discussing that before the board meeting, maybe we change that wording to new position.
You want to put new position? Okay.
Chicken and egg thing.
I know, that's what, we come back and forth, okay.
I think you guys have a call board meeting before school starts.
I would like to have one, and I know the principals would like to, since our first contracted day is July 31st. You know, we've had some unexpected resignations or relocations. Even today, a principal found out that someone who was on maternity leave at the end of the year will not be able to return. So it would be great to have, you know, like even if it's a morning call session for those last minute hires.
Item number 9.
Page 2.
Yes.
Yes, page 2, I'm sorry. Can you explain that one a little bit?
Yes, the numbers, and Melody actually could elaborate, but the numbers and the enrollment in that particular class exceeded, more so at Spain Park, so they had to add that position to help cover classes.
It's a certification issue, basically. There's no one with the appropriate certification, only one person on staff with that because of turnover. And that person logically cannot teach a required class to every sophomore in the building.
One of the teachers that formerly taught some of those classes resigned, so they couldn't have one. We only had one staff member that was able to cover those.
And there's potentially, I don't know if it's on here, another retirement we've had, or retirement, or other employment that we're looking at whether we would replace or not. So just from a sheer number of units standpoint, that's not on here, right?
No.
So is this a replacement or an actual new position?
Well, net-wise, we're still below. So it's as far as net gains and teacher units, it's still below. It's just new position in the area of health.
We're expecting I don't know how to put it, it's a resignation. We're expecting a resignation elsewhere potentially.
That resignation is on here.
Is it?
At the end of the day, position is because of student enrollment of the required course in the county.
Where is that?
And nobody has it.
And to ease your mind, I went in and did a dummy schedule and tried every way I know how and to make it work without doing that. There's just too many students and only one body
Is this a male or a female?
that we're replacing.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Oh, number 9. I believe it's a man.
Yeah, I believe it's a male, but they don't list that on their application, but I think it's a male.
Is this a coaching position also?
That I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, I know it's 5 health places.
Can you find out and let us know about that?
Mm-hmm.
Or let me know?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Mr. Craig or Mary, y'all want to elaborate on number 24 and number 29 on page 4?
I will.
Okay.
Let me make sure I understand what you're talking
Um,
about. Number 1, let's start with number 1 on 11.
Wait a minute, where are we?
Page 1 on page 11. At our previous board meeting, that position was approved for a math coach at Green Valley Elementary School. After that appointment was done, we became aware of potential conflict with the state nepotism statute. We reviewed that. We solicited the guidance from the State Ethics Commission. We believe that the most appropriate way to ensure that we are in sync with the state nepotism statute is to take the course of action that is enclosed in this personnel report, which are the 3 actions you mentioned, Ms. Frazier. The rescission of the previous appointment, in effect walking that transaction back, walking that employment action back. None of these folks have worked a contract day as of yet, so we wanted to go ahead and do that in connection with this board meeting. And then you will see that same individual, the principal, has recommended him for a regular classroom teaching position, I believe 3rd grade teaching position. But again, we have done this in discussion with the Ethics Commission. I've been on the phone with Mr. Jim Sumner and also Mr. Hugh Evans, and they have we've walked through. They believe that the approach we're taking is the right approach in terms of again rescinding the original appointment, kind of going back to undoing that appointment, and then squaring it up from there.
Thank you.
You know, what are the range of changes between the nepotism ruling versus the August 2013 ruling or bill that was passed that came into effect August 2013?
I think there was legislation, listen, yeah, in 2013 was when the most recent, obviously the most recent nepotism statute, I guess, was amended.
My understanding.
And that was the backdrop for this analysis of this.
The absolute clarity that amended statute has not really been determined yet. It's still up. This is the Attorney General, I guess.
That's my understanding. That was a board member stated that there was somebody has solicited an Attorney General's opinion on a certain aspect of it. But our analysis, our discussions with the Ethics Commission centered around the existing law and its applicability to this case.
What can be done, Mr. Craig, Ms. Beal, to sure that we are not in violation of this new statute in the future?
I think certainly this is a learning opportunity for all of us to kind of reflect on how we got to this point in terms of looking at our processes and our procedures. And we will do that. In fact, we've done a little bit of that already. Continue to do that, to review the nepotism statute with our principals, with our folks that are essentially the frontline hiring agents for our district, principals, department heads and such. Ms. Field.
We discussed doing in-depth, training with all of our administrators, not just principals, but all administrators, whether they're district level or local. We do, frequent meetings with them over policy changes or policy recommendations. Sometimes it might be geared around progressive discipline or other matters, but this will certainly be used to, make sure they disclose it, because it is a requirement to disclose to the superintendent. And, if he's not made aware, which is, what occurred, then, but I think, this has made an impact on individuals to be conscious of what those policies are.
Is that not a simple question that can be asked, since it is stated in our policy manual?
I would imagine so, because of the new act, that, especially if, you're interviewing for potential vacancies, and oftentimes it may be a distant relative. I know we've had board members that have abstained from voting when it was, a family member or in some connection. But I definitely think that's something that we need to discuss with Mr. Sweeney, as far as how it's posed and asked in an interview setting.
Mr. Nash, can you make note of that, to ask Mr. Sweeney how, if it can be, since it is stated in our policy manual, can it be a question that can just be outright asked in an interview process?
Certainly.
I think when it's an interview process, it needs to be on the application.
I think it
Yes or
is.
no?
It is.
Also consider that when the legislature, when all the bills are dealt with at the end of the session, the governor evaluates the bills. Now, this is not for the application, but to make sure that somewhere this gets reviewed by legal, to make sure that our manual is updated to reflect what the legislature's changed, whether it be a veto or whatever it takes passage. If it passes and affects our policy manual, I certainly think it needs to be updated to reflect the code, which the code will take place over our manual anyway. We'll make it more clear.
Ask another question regarding that. As far as a board member is concerned, and I have no one that is going into education, now this is just a hypothetical question. Is it when would we feel the need to abstain from voting? If we had a cousin on here, or we had a brother-in-law on here, I mean, what is from a school board standpoint, are we similar to employees within the Hoover School District? Do y'all know
I
the
think
answer to
what's
that?
typically happened in the past, when there's any question of that individual board member, will seek advice of board attorney and take appropriate course,
Okay.
either abstain or whatever the case may be. That's the way that's typically happened, as I've witnessed.
When we've been aware of an appointment, then typically Mr. Sweeney will advise as far as, procedures during a formal approval process.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding personnel this afternoon? I'll have one more. On page 10, number 6, did she used to be at Greystone Elementary? And she's married now? Is that who that is?
It must have been before I was in HR, so it had to be longer than 7 years ago, but
Okay.
I'm not sure. She's been at Gwen since I've been in HR, but she
Okay.
could have been at Greystone.
That's just an unusual name, and I did not, and if so, then obviously she got married, so. Do you know if she used to be president? Any other questions regarding personnel for Ms. Bill or for Mr. Craig? If not, let's move on to support services contracts. Dr. Mayer's here. Does anyone have any questions?
So Dr. Mayor's not here, we're gonna try to
I'm going to
Yeah.
pitch it.
Okay.
screens or fill in.
Try to get it done.
Okay, Ms. Green, you're on.
Basically, these are the same services we contract every year with the same providers we have used with Fidelity over the past few years. I've reread them, Dr. Mayor and I have discussed them. There's nothing that's a change or unusual about what we've done. It's standard for what we need to meet the IEP needs of our students. As you can see, looking down through most of these, in fact, all of these, with the exception of one, we've used a different actual provider, but we've used the same company for one of those. I believe it's the speech. But
I think most of them too, Ms. Green, are not structured to use what you, or you pay for what you use up to a cap.
absolutely, it's capped. In most cases, we do not reach the cap, but we set the cap based on the specific students year to year. So, for example, if there are 5 students one year and 12 the next year, then obviously that has to be taken into account. That would need those particular services, but the services are very specialized, and so therefore it seldom reaches that.
For the sake of the audience, can you kind of go over the purpose of it, not all of it, but purpose of
Sure.
services?
I can't get it to load on here, but
I know mine was slow also.
I know it's really just,
Hmm.
hmm?
What is this one?
Sure.
You got it.
Well, still his, he's on the.
Okay.
You got it.
Thank you.
Hard copy.
Hard copy, that'd be better, that way you can look too. If you look on the first page of Dr. Mayer's memorandum, she gives you just a little bit about each of the services that we have. And on the second page as well too. Basically, we are dealing with things that we don't have the funds commitment to have within our district. So for example, we may have students who need what's called O&M, orientation and mobility training, because they're visually impaired. So we wouldn't hire a visually impaired teacher because that's a transient need. It will go with that student. The student may or may not stay in our system. So that's when we contract out. Speech and hearing for audiology services. I mean, those are very specialized tests with equipment that would be needed that we would have to purchase if we did not contract that out. The same is true of the contract with psychometric testing, same principles. We've got contracts with occupational therapists. We've got contracts with a job coach to work with our students who are what was formerly the Alabama Occupational Diploma, but now is the Essential Skills Services to help them find jobs. We have a clinical psychologist with whom we work who works in intervention. This is for behavioral issues, again, for which we would have to contract out at a significant expense. The evaluations for our visually impaired students, again, highly sensitive equipment, very specialized for a small number of students, but so the contract is for that. The only one that probably you may not be exceptionally familiar with would be the contract the contract for services provided to adults and preschool English learners, and that's in the Community Family Literacy Program, and that we get funds for that from grants, donations, and federal funding. So that is to help our students and students and their families who are English language learners. Does that help at all?
Which one is that?
That would be on the last page of her explanation at the very first, and that would be those 3 contracts there.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So is number 6 meant to be as a backup to number 3?
Yes,
If
in a
needed?
sense. If needed, it's a backup, but also ironically, there are different batteries of tests, and some groups specialize in one kind of them and another specialize in another. Whether or not, for example, it depends on what the cognitive difficulty or the disability might be. We do so much of that testing that it usually takes both.
So basically, these contracts are renewed prior to school of each year, so they're just
Yes.
one-year contracts,
They're one-year contracts. They're renewed based on need year to year.
okay?
And this is a cap that would be paid. It doesn't mean that they're automatically going to be paid this amount. It's based on services rendered, and this is the cap.
Okay.
You say grants and donations, what are you talking about?
The Family Literacy Program is pretty broad-based. There are people who donate, like we donate to charity, for other charities or other things, so there are donations there. Federal funds and grants are the primary source of the income, and teachers write grants. Dr. Mayer works with grants to bring in funds for that, and it just doesn't touch us other than that we do the contract with them, pay for a separate account. And as you can see, it's not a large amount, but it makes a significant difference when you're talking about being able to help our English language learner families. And that's the best part of it. That's why we go to all the trouble with the grant, because it's a family-based program that goes outside the school. Other than that, those are the ones that we use every year. I've worked with almost every one of these contract providers at some point with intervention, and it's a significant benefit to our students. There's just no way around it. We don't have the manpower to do it all.
Thank you, Ms. Green.
Mhm.
Any other questions regarding support services contracts? If not, let's move on to financials. Business actions, you've got the financial statements, payroll, cash disbursements, any questions for Ms. Ante regarding any financial questions? Any questions? Okay, let's move on to our bid section, which is healthcare education simulators. Ms. Ante, do we have a STEM partner presented to
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We do. And I also have some literature that I will share with you. And Jason Sajak is here, and he's the teacher in this program. This is the purpose, the way that we came about doing this bid, and he can explain it in more detail, has to do with a grant that Spain Park High School applied for and were awarded. And so in their grant, this is some of the items that were to be purchased to be used in this program that he is initiating at Spain Park. So I will share with you the pictures of what we're purchasing, at least some of them. That is one. That is the one that bleeds. Bleeds. This
What?
is, it bleeds. This is the infant one, and then this one is the, for, emergency care.
Are these like life size?
Yes, they're full body simulators.
Why is the guy that bleeds redheaded?
Jason can answer that question. You have
Come on.
exhausted my knowledge on this topic.
They move the quickest.
Jason, do you want to stand up and explain a little bit about your program and what your grant's there to cover?
Yeah, this was our, the health sciences dual enrollment grant with Jeff State. It was the state bond money that we applied for, and we were able to receive the $227,000 to purchase new equipment for our dual enrollment program for students. And what you're looking at are a lot of the high fidelity simulators that give these students life practice on, mannequins. So all these mannequins that you have can do multiple things, go into cardiac arrest, bleed, where these students can practice their different procedures that they're learning and trained on. And at the completion of the school year, once they successfully complete the class, they'll be able to sit for the national certification and become basic EMT certified. And so these are all the tools that we're putting together for them to practice on so they can be proficient to pass the exam and then go on to obtain the certification so that hopefully next summer they'll all be employed and build our EMT base.
This is just for Spain Park, is that correct?
That is correct.
So Hoover High School doesn't have access to Contino in Spain, this is just the grant
Well,
of Jeff State?
That is correct with our students between the two. And from what I understand, there's another round of this money that being made available from the state that Hoover High School will be applying for.
Is anything on the bid process? We're showing here that this was submitted to 5 different companies, of which only one submitted pricing with a note that it was not as the price they submitted was not as we specified in the bid.
Well, we had a warranty difference on 2 of the items, which apparently was a manufacturer warranty.
Any feedback at all why the other 4 companies chose not to bid?
No, Jason helped me because I was not familiar with who the companies were that operated or provided this type of equipment. We surveyed all of them. I know that they received the bid. They just chose not to bid on this particular item.
I do have a question you may have answered. Why was the warranty changed? We got a lesser warranty than what they stated in the bid.
It was a manufacturer's warranty, and that would just be because I wouldn't know what the standard manufacturer's warranty was for that particular item. We just
Would that
put a
have
2-year
changed
warranty
with the
on
other
it.
bidders if they would have?
I have no way to know that.
Or would you put the bid out for 2, but then you found out the factory only does 1?
That's what they came back with me with that
And that wasn't
information.
negotiating, they wouldn't negotiate?
I have not talked to them. I certainly can talk to them about it.
If that's
I don't know if they can warranty the manufacturers. If it is strictly manufacturer warranty, I don't know that they can negotiate that and provide an additional warranty on top of that warranty.
I guess my whole point, Mr. Kelly was mentioning it, is I wonder if the 1-year warranty would have been noted to all 5 bidders, that might have changed and give us a more competitive pricing rather than just having one price.
I would think that would be unlikely. I think they would have done like this company did and just made a note of the manufacturer's warranty and submitted. Typically, they'll do that.
A lot of times in the bid process too, if they're interested in bidding, they'll inquire about things like that. And if those things come up, we'll do an amendment to the bid. If those things show up during the process, but I'm not, did they even call you?
And more than likely, it's highly unusual. I would surmise it's unusual for a high school to be submitting a bid for this, and they may just not have been familiar with bidding for this type of education.
How long was that bid?
Little, 13 days.
How do we advertise?
We don't, we reverse bid. We get the names and we push the information out.
May I ask a
And
question?
this is to take place this school year?
That's correct.
I was going to, is this vendor one that supplies the other programs throughout the state to the junior college?
They're predominantly, there's a lot of uniform equipment that you'll find at
Right, so this supplier, they're a main supplier for these programs,
Correct.
this particular vendor.
Correct.
Okay.
Is this our amount after The grant,
No, the grant will cover this and that.
The grant will cover that.
oh,
Yeah, that's a question I had also. Mr. Craig explained this is part of the grant, so we're not out of any budget money. That's
No, it's fully funded.
That's what
It's fully funded by the grant, the purchasing.
congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you, very excited.
It's a great program, that's good.
Any other questions? And thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the healthcare education simulators? If not, the last thing on our agenda is textbook recommendation. Dr. Dodson?
Watson's on vacations.
Fine, here, you got
Dr.
it.
Adams.
Okay. Any questions for Dr. Adams regarding the textbook recommendation?
You know, we certainly noted that it's, we saved some money, $2,000, and you already covered my question from last meeting, that we get the updates as far as electronics, so thank you very much.
And we really aren't surprised when an AP exam has been introduced and revised, that about 10 months out, the new materials begin to show up. And so that's what happened. Fortunately for us, we're in a social studies adoption year, so when the word came down, the College Board suggesting this could be a good text. We hadn't bought anything yet from the spring recommendation, so the timing just worked real well.
Any further questions?
I'd like to thank Trustful. Don and I attended their work session in June, and it was great. They fabricated an agenda, so they already know their points of discussion for that. And I'd like the board to kind of consider, just as we did in January, we had a curriculum presentation, so we knew that ahead of time. They almost set something up like a schedule, almost like a football schedule, to know what we would be presenting for that, maybe the next 3 or 4 board meetings. Probably can't capture all 6 or the entire year, but to kind of know what will be talked about in that particular work session. Again, example, the curriculum was a pretty good one, so it gives people a heads up on whether I can make that one or send somebody to that one or not. This is a suggestion. But it was a very informative.
I'd like to thank Mr. Crane for the suggestion last meeting that I went and looked at the online session for the state board, their work session, pretty lengthy. I went and looked at it at home on the recorded version, and it is interesting to see how they run theirs. It's hard sometimes to tell who is actually speaking because it's just it wasn't a live broadcast, but it's interesting to look at what they cover.
Out of the there's, I had a great opportunity to listen to theirs a while back, so I remember how was theirs different from.
They obviously had an agenda for the work session, which I'm going to go find out if I can see it so I can follow their meeting, because they're going up in topics like we are.
Correct.
And it may just be me being ignorant to this point, but it would have helped to know how they structured it. But as their board members would come up, they would come sit, discuss it, and then leave, and then someone else would come up, and it seemed to be a free flow of questions like we're doing here.
Right.
It's hard for me to understand if it was staff communicating or who was the public. So
The
let's see
staff.
if I can understand. Do you know?
Staff.
It was
The
staff.
staff were the ones that were moving in and out of the seats, and the board stayed seated along the
Oh,
sides.
Could you, it's hard to say, was there much public interaction or?
Public doesn't interact
Okay,
during the
that's
work
what I
session.
couldn't determine, so that was all staff talking. Can learn from it. I intend to go back and put my earphones in and listen again.
That's all I had. Ms. Crane had requested to present something to the board. Are you still prepared to do that tonight?
Sure.
Mr. Cruz is.
I am.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Do you want to come up to the podium?
Sure.
Although I'll tell you, I hate this spot.
Do you need to use the screen?
I don't.
Okay.
It's just a check,
Okay.
if you don't mind. You know, basically what we want to present, when I say we, a group of people that got together when discussions were being made about whether to continue busing or not, got together to start working on ideas that would help us find other ways to have some savings. And the objective of the presentation really is twofold. Number one is to really just establish a partnership. Not make it an adversarial type thing. We just have recommendations, and hopefully you'll find them useful. Secondly is to share the data, and I will caution everyone, data only tells us so much information. I have to set a price for 2 major markets every day, but if I don't have communication with those markets, I don't have my hand on the pulse. So I know that our looking at data only gets us so far, and hopefully we can create dialogue with the state. So with that, I'll just share with you. We focused on 6 areas: programs, personnel, policy, students, non-school-based programs for positions, and budget practices. You know, we looked at those areas to find out, you know, are there some ways where we can save some money? So when you look at programs, we suggest a review of offered electives. Do we have enough students participating in each of these electives, or should some of them be eliminated? Are there some programs that we could implement that could reduce our costs elsewhere? The plan to offer more online courses this coming year is really a step in the right direction. And you know, it's good for the bright students. It's not meant for everyone. I always caution my mother, who wanted to know if I'd never remarry. Not everything was meant for everyone, so, so I know that that's the case here too. Our preschool program is locally funded. Is there an opportunity for us to explore grants and state funding to offset some of that cost? Personnel. Supplemental pay could generate, or the way we handle supplemental pay could generate a savings, either by going with a percentage reduction or going with a flat fee. Looking at the data that we had available at the time, a 10% reduction in supplemental pay could generate $500,000 in savings. I know that's a touchy subject, but balancing a budget is a touchy subject. Can we get participation from the city to share some of the cost for security for our schools? And that is a really big tab that we pay. And we're all citizens of the city. Maybe the city could share some of that cost with us.
Are you referring to our SROs?
Yes.
Which we do split with the city.
Oh, we do?
We split, but the question is, should they share more of it?
Oh. Eliminating out-of-district employee benefits would be a reduction. And I know that that's a benefit bringing employees into the system, but it's also an opportunity to possibly look at some cost reduction. For policies, some of the costs illustrated here are surely going to be up for review when preparing for future budgets. But many large companies, the first thing that they look at in their policies for cutting is really travel expenses. And that's an area that we could probably evaluate a little bit deeper as well, and find out if there's some ways that we could, you know, either cut back or either find, you know, cheaper ways to do it. The competitive landscape for these products and services is so high that lower costs could possibly be realized in a bid process. As far as students are concerned, no one wants to add to the burden of cost of educating their child. I have a child that's in the IB program. I pay a fee for that program, but it's possible that I may have to pay a higher fee for her to be in that program. Those are things that we have to consider as well. Are there other programs that we could raise the fees a little bit to reduce the cost and maintain the programs? our student population continues to rise, and unfortunately, so do the costs. So to maintain them really warrants a consideration for raising the fees. Non-school-based programs or non-school-based related items. When you look at the cost efficiencies here, you have to answer the question, how essential is this position or this item to the quality of the school, or would eliminating it cause harm to the quality of the education that it's providing? Some things we're going to look at, and we're going to see that maybe we can move the job description from this position into 2 other positions and consolidate that way. Of course,
A couple of examples there, I'm tracking so far, I understand.
oh, give you an example. Well, you have job descriptions for every position. We could look at specific job descriptions and determine, what, for this job description, we can take all of the responsibilities and spread it out over 2 other job descriptions. So it's really a reduction of force. And that's what these are hard questions, but they're actually very necessary. In the review of job descriptions, these positions can sometimes be absorbed somewhere else. There are reasons to compare privatizing versus current staffing. Maybe there's a savings that we could realize if we privatize some of our operation. I think we enjoy that in many cases. Maybe there's an opportunity to do a little deeper. And the last area I'd like to talk about is really budget practices. There is no time of the year that I dread more in our company than preparing the budget for the next year. It is the most difficult thing that I have to do. And then the second most difficult thing that we have to do is to balance it through the course of the year. That being said, maybe there are some things we can consider about our process for the future that would help us down the road. Could we start with a blank canvas and go to a zero-based budget process? And I've been in operations that have done that successfully. It's not a guarantee that it improves things, but maybe sometimes when you consider that most budgets begin with what we did last year, it really ends up being the blueprint for the next year. It doesn't really give you an opportunity to really realize savings if we're just going to do a copy of the previous year. Be very specific on every line item and do away with anything that could be categorized as an other. Other becomes the gray area, which really gets us into trouble when we end up overspending or going beyond the plan. Forecasting our expenses and our revenues deeper, 3 to 5 years into the future, and trying to get a grip, trying to get a little bit ahead of the process. And then finally, if we could have maybe incorporate a monthly year-to-date report on where we are in the current budget year to make sure we don't get too far behind and stay on track. So basically, those are some ideas that we'd like to offer. And also just to say it's just really out of wanting to really be a partner and not just come to the monthly meetings and everybody give their concern and a lot of emotion and not enough dialogue. Yes.
Can I ask a question on programs? Alternative school. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure you can.
I'll hit that. One of the discussions was possibly to have a regional alternative school. There are places across the country where this has been done. Alabama is, everybody kind of likes to do their own version, so that can be difficult, but we've got, 13 school systems now in Jefferson County, immediate Shelby County area, and maybe there are some savings that could be had, and maybe some efficiencies, and maybe even bring programs in that might help kids more. Because I can imagine with Alabaster and Pelham coming online, they're pretty small. We've got Leeds that's tiny, Midfield that's tiny. We've got all these really small school systems. I'll give you a great example of a collaboration. Bessemer, Midfield, and Fairfield just got together and are putting together a preschool program. a state-funded preschool program. And it's a wonderful example of collaboration among districts. Again, it's out of tradition, but you know, I know that the alternative school is one of those areas that y'all have talked about because it is completely funded with local funds.
Thank you.
That help?
And planning periods, that's the teacher's planning period?
Yes. Yeah, we were talking about, Mr. Singer has brought this up a number of times about that the teachers have 2 planning periods, I believe, at the high school. And maybe they need to have 1. That's not, I mean, I can feel Dana looking at me over here from behind where she is, but you know, you have to be sensitive to the fact that is it better for all the teachers to keep their jobs or to have that extra planning period? We want to keep the extra planning period, okay? Remember, these are not, we're not saying you should cut this or should cut that. It's just thinking about, you know, sometimes you have to remember the reason we came to this. Dr. Bice addressed me directly after a meeting and said, you know, you might want to put your own solutions on the table because sometimes the people who are in charge of making the solutions have run out of them. They've gotten kind of used to doing things, you know, the way that they always have. And so we were really trying to be helpful and put some fresh eyes
Absolutely.
to this.
I was just needing some clarification as I study this when we leave here. I'll make sure I was thinking on the same lines.
Do you have this broken down, for example, cell phones? Does that mean, when you say policy, cell phones meaning we need to change the student's policy, or?
No, cell phones meaning we need to look at who our vendors are and what we're spending on and if we can get a better deal somewhere.
That's what I was talking about the first time, but yeah, you've got breakdowns within categories and say, I would imagine they've already thought, we think this is a better way of doing this. I'd like to see that.
Well, we
We would actually love to sit down as a group and be able to talk about all of it, because we spent, as we've said in the past many times before, over 100 man-hours. Just handing you 25 sheets of paper is not going to, as so often, you know, you have said to us, Mr. Cooper, that
we don't have all
the facts right there don't give you all of the discussion and everything that has happened. We would love to have a time to get our group of budget people together with you all so that you can ask those questions and we can give you the answers and just let you know that we put everything on the table, and I think that's the only way that things are going to get solved is by saying there can be no sacred cows.
Let me say something, I'll shoot from the hip a little bit, nothing I've ever done. I mean, all these topics are legit, they're good stuff. And where I think the breakdown comes between the way things have been done in the past and what you're proposing here is it's always and we're always and. And what I see here is an opportunity, you know, to come together on a bigger picture, because what Scrooge, you indicated that there are trade-offs in everything you do.
Exactly.
You know, if you miss the price twice a day, you're
Somebody else is doing it.
Right. So the point of it is, for example, let's take virtual high school. That's a great idea. I mean, who in the world can argue with that? In fact, you hear Brian Phillips talk about the technology thing and what he's trying to do and how it's going to actually reduce costs over time because of wireless teacher units. That's a smart thing. But what I'm saying is, you got these things here. You guys have got a perspective. We got a perspective. Greg's got a perspective. It'd be really cool to sit down there and say, okay, if we do this, what does that mean over here?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
the cause and effect. And then, not to say we have to agree or disagree, but get the big picture on the table where everybody understands, you know, how it all plays out.
Benefit and costs.
You know,
Benefit and
one
costs.
thing missing here, this whole thing, you know, that to me is a big trump card, and everything from transportation to teacher units to planning periods is discipline. What does it cost us for discipline? What does it cost in terms of administrative units, teacher units, whatever, as an example? How do you manage that? And you talk about alternative school, you know, we got more takers than we got space. You know, so it's, and then you say, well, should we even be in the alternative school business to some extent? Because, you know, we're doing some pretty cool things that nobody else really does on one side of the fence. So when you do that, and I think that's just real healthy. And I think basically the way to approach it is, I mean, you know, I'll take one of these, you know, and I'll look at this and I'll say, okay, travel, here's what we do, what professional development support, here's why we do this. Okay, you know, and see what, if you cut travel, you cut professional development, then teachers don't want to come here because they can't stay with you know, all that stuff. So I
But
think
could you
it's
trade it out for virtual professional development? See, they're all, and this is exactly the kind of conversation we want to have. And this is the perfect time to have it because it's budget season. You know, they're busy preparing the budget. And so I think, and that, I love to hear you think like that.
Well, I'm not saying that because I think you'll be really surprised. I wouldn't throw it out there, but I think you'll be very surprised at all of the stuff that's been going on and the thought processes behind most of these things already and what has already been done. It's, you know, and it's hard to capture every little detail and every little aspect of all these 6 items, much less all the subtitles that are in there. But it's, I mean, it's a pretty, I like it because it's a pretty powerful story to tell and a pretty powerful story for people to understand.
I appreciate that, and I'd like to say this, and that is that these kinds of discussions could be had. There's a woman who tweets live from the Tuscaloosa City Board of Education, and they have, routinely, they have 6 and 7 hour meetings. That's not something I want to do. But they have finance committee. They have finance, well, she said sometimes they go on until after midnight, which I didn't know they had that much business to discuss. But they do a finance committee, and I listened into their finance committee. She broadcast it live. It's some good, healthy discussion, and they've got not just the experts, the school people, the finance people, but they've got people from the community in there. They've got people from the city there. They've got people from the board there. And of course, it was broadcast, so I couldn't see their faces. But it's that cross-section that, you know, rather than just taking what the experts say and then either, you know, taking that as, you can take it as a starting point, but be flexible, you know? And I'm hearing you say that y'all are open to that.
Well,
I just don't know the mechanism to do it.
Everybody else.
Let me ask this question. We're hearing Mr. Cruz and Ms. Crane conversation. From that point, how do we move from here? You know,
Well,
that's the big question.
I have a little problem with bringing everybody in from the city and everybody else,
Right.
you know, right off the bat. I think there's a lot of homework that can be done, I mean, because you've got 1 or 2, you have very brief descriptions here that constitute a huge spectrum of themes underneath.
We have more. We just need
I
to.
know.
Didn't want
I'm
to
shocked
you.
it's one major. I mean,
I'll email it to you later if you want to see it. But
But, you know,
We're trying to keep the
you know, maybe what you do was we pick one and kind of start off and see how the process works. Mark?
This afternoon, we had a meeting at the Friends of Hoover, and it's appropriate that you bring up online learning. Well, the presentation was made by Proctor U, and one of the things that was quite interesting is their whole methodology of proctoring for many different kinds of universities and schools, literally all over the world, and the relative low cost of it, so that you could have a student working at home to take the test, that they're able to verify, et cetera, and I think the range of cost, if I recall correctly, was between $8.75, like for a half-hour kind of thing, to, I think it was $41. Because certainly when we get more into distance learning, we still need to be able to do the testing. And to be able to do that where you've got all the right kind of verification and things of that nature, that's an opening in that particular area. Doesn't mean you have to adopt it, but take a look at it. Same thing with, you know, something that's not even on the list. Let's say insurance. I'm sure we spend an awful lot of money on insurance. That's the kind of thing, while it's permissible not to put it out for bid, it would be appropriate to put it out for bid.
I'll submit, it's a very good case in point right there. I bet you that if, I mean, I don't know fully, but intuitively I would say that that example right there would be a good example for everybody to understand how it's done, and why it's done, and what the benefits are for doing it that way, you know. But you know, you talk about the testing, proctoring, and that kind of thing. You talk about 2 planning periods for high school teachers, and that kind of. You got 150 kids you're responsible for grading papers manually. You're gonna need some downtime. You can only do so much at home if you got a family life at all. So right there, if you could do testing distance-wise, distance learning-wise, yeah, I mean, there's all kind of trickle-down effects that happen.
Well, let me just say this one thing. Looking at what is handed out, it's roughly, let's say, 20 categories. They can be easily be put into 100 subcategories. So, would it be a better idea to kind of realistically look at some points that we can work through together? Was 3 or 4? This idea that we can narrow it that way, so when we begin to have these discussions, and if we do X and Y, then Z will come from it. Well, that's not beneficial for our system. That can be thrown to the side, and we can move down that road. But you know, good conversation, great ideas, but on the back end of it, Mr. Craig understands the internal working of the school system. So I think coming together will be beneficial.
And that was what I was gonna say, was it'd be great if, because they've done the legwork to help you guys, because, I mean, y'all do a lot of the work, but we're in the trenches as parents and stuff, and so I think if we going forward, as Mr. Cooper and Mr. Murphy, you said, you know, get some of the board members, maybe with Mr. Craig or Mr. Ante together with some of our budget groups, some of the PTO, because I know there's a lack of communication between the PTO a lot of times and the parents and the board. And let us get together and cover some of those subgroups so that, you know, we can go back and say, okay, you know, this is what we see on our end, what do you guys see on your end, and work together. You know, we don't have to cover all 20 topics. Like you said, maybe start with 3 or 4 that seem the most important. But I think if we work together, it'll go a long way with the rest of the community to see that, you know, the board really is invested in our schools and our families, and you know.
You got to define the process first. That's the real sticking point. That's been the sticking point since the first bus issue.
I want to put in a good word for collaboration. I think in the last meeting, you were talking about the child nutrition program, and you're collaborating with Homewood, and I was very impressed with that, and that's just one step. You have a wonderful resource here in Mr. Sweeney, who works for many school systems, and I commented to him that he maybe might have some ideas for collaboration, since he works for different systems.
In his spare time?
It might be feasible. He may want to set up a consulting firm. I don't know. And then of course Dr. Pounsey has come into the community, and I think he would be a good resource to, you know, what's possible, what's legal, what's not. And then where we think we have an idea, but we need to have the legislature move on it, make it legal. Now that David Faulkner is in the legislature, maybe we can give him some ideas for some legislation. So maybe the State Department could issue a waiver, but if not, we could get some legislation that permit more collaboration and bring in the cost efficiencies, economies of scale.
I don't know what Mr. Fraser wants to do, anything from the board perspective, Mr. Craig, overall superintendent. But to me, if you're going to do something, start with the policy thing. And just be interesting to convey why we do what we do, why we decide things the way we decided on those 5 items. There's some pretty interesting stuff behind all that nobody could possibly see unless you're responsible for that piece of it. And to me, that kind of approach kind of makes sense to everyone, because like I said earlier, at the very beginning, pushing one side of the balloon is going to pop out the other. It's all about optimization.
But unfortunately, we have to find some way to shrink the balloon, don't we?
I'll tell you what, we'll do this. It's time for our board meeting. If the board, if y'all are okay with this, would y'all like for me to talk to Mr. Craig and just see if we could get together once a month, once every other month? I know everybody's schedule is busy and, summertime may be better than others, I'm not sure. But are y'all okay with me talking to Mr. Craig?
Small bites.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz.
Yeah, we're gonna take a 5-minute break, okay? At this time, we're gonna go ahead and call the Hoover Board of Education meeting to order. If you choose, would you please join me in a moment of silent prayer? Thank you. So please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started tonight, I apologize for being a few minutes late. We moved our work session from 4 o'clock until 4:30. And I guess that's something we'll have to discuss if we need to go back to 4 o'clock, but I apologize for the, running a little bit late with our work session. Before we begin our meeting tomorrow night, we have Paul DeMarco in the audience. And Paul, would you like to stand and introduce yourself and say a few words?
I will. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I appreciate y'all allowing me to address everybody tonight. So for those that don't know me, I'm Paul DeMarco, one of the state representatives for Hoover. And it's appropriate for the past 6 months I've been running for the United States Congress, the 6th Congressional District, to represent you in Congress. And it's appropriate because one of the last places I'm campaigning is here in Hoover within the school system. A lot's changed over the past 8 years when I was first elected. A lot's changed here with the school system. A lot's changed personally. I got married. I've got a 9-week-old at home. I've got a lot of gray hairs. But I hope what y'all see that hasn't changed about me is my commitment to the Hoover school system. Whether it was advocating to make sure that the local system had the local decisions, whether it was the calendar, whether it was the Accountability Act, whether it was going to PTO meetings, or coming to school board meetings, or the Hoover parent-teacher meetings, working with schools on grants, mainly trying to be one of the most accessible, available state representatives in the state of Alabama. That's how I best tried to serve the Hoover school system. Doing my part. I don't know any other way. The most important part of being an elected official is not what we say, it's listening. And while not everybody in the audience has always agreed with everything I've said, y'all know I've always tried to put the Hoover school system first and put our students first. Everything I've done in Montgomery has put what's in the best interest of our students. I've done that in Montgomery, and you've got my commitment and my promise I will do that in Washington, D.C. My heart is here, and that's what you need more than ever from somebody in Washington, D.C. Somebody who's going to put the people first. We've got a great school system, we've got a great city, we've got a great region, we've got a great state. The challenges lie in Washington, D.C. right now. And more than ever, you need somebody with experience who can show up with day one and challenge what's going on, regardless of political party. That's what we need right now. People are going to put people first. And I hope I've earned your respect in the fact that I have tried to work as hard as I can for the school system to be here, be at our schools, and be for our students. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you. I would appreciate your vote tomorrow, and I would appreciate your prayers. Thank y'all very much for allowing me to speak tonight. Thank y'all. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have before you the agenda for today's board meeting. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved. You have the minutes from the board meeting of June 9th, 2014. Do I have a motion to approve these minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Next is the personnel report. Any additional questions for Ms. Bell? I think we covered pretty much everything in work session. Are there any additional questions for Ms. Bell? If not, do I have a motion to approve the personnel report?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Ms.
The pers-
Fraser, I'd like to make a note that I am opposed to item number 24 on page 4.
Okay, Ms. White, if you will make a notation of that, please. Mr. Presley is opposed to number 24 on page 4. Any other opposed? If not, the majority of the board voted in favor of the personnel report. The personnel report is approved as recommended by the superintendent.
Oh, I'm sorry. Coach Miles has somebody to introduce tonight, passage of personnel.
First of all, I want to thank y'all for unbelievable time at Hoover. I don't want to get emotional because I'm so proud of this guy. But I feel very blessed. And I really appreciate your support.
How long have you been doing
Are you talking about at Hoover?
this?
11? Madge has to tell me all the time. I can never remember. 11 years.
Myra already rescinded one appointment tonight.
But anyway, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate, not just the board, but all of you people and the support that you've given not only to me, but my staff and to the kids and at Hoover High School. And that's my passion, that's my heart, and that's why I'm so passionate about recommending Coach Irvin for replacing me. He's going to take it to another level. He's an awesome guy. Love him like my son, his family, his wife, and little boy are here.
Does cousin Keith here?
I think a lot of his family is here. And they're awesome people, first and foremost. And he loves Hoover High School, and he loves the kids of Hoover High School. And he's very passionate about the job. And one of the things that I'm so proud of to say about Andy, other than he's a great man, is he truly cares about every kid in every sport in the high school. And he's an amazing guy. So thank y'all for everything you did for me. Thank you for approving him. So you want to say something now that I've got you shook up?
Well, she said a lot, but I appreciate the time to speak, and I appreciate Mr. Hewlin and Myra, and I appreciate my family. I'm going to make them stand up just a little bit because family is important to me. I learned that from Myra, from her parents, and at Hoover, just in general, I tell everybody it's a huge place, but it's a small town feel, and we're all small town country folks from Rainbow City, Alabama, and Glencoe, and that kind of thing. But my mom's back there, my sister, y'all can stand up, my best friend, Jason, and his wife, my brother, Tommy, and his family, Amy, Alex, Andrew, my wife. This is a big deal now. You think it's not a big deal? They know where I came from, all right? My family, my father-in-law, who I want to say something about. You know, my dad passed away in 1998. I married Krista 11 years ago Sunday. He's been a father to me. If you can't emulate someone you want to be like, it's him. I mean, he's a great man. He's a wonderful granddaddy, wonderful dad. But he's right there in the tight shirt. He got me this sweet jacket. I got another one. All I have is coaching t-shirts. So, his wife Candy, who I thank for everything she does for us. My wife, who's awesome. You can stand up. And my son Brayden, who I love so much. But thank you for your time. I appreciate everything that you've done, and I look forward to working with you in the future and keeping up her legacy. It's gigantic shoes to fill, and I'm just going to do what I can to make you proud and make the community of Hoover proud.
Thank you.
What did your dad get that sports bra from?
He got his belt. we told Coach, Mr. Kellogg, they do have baby blue too. We couldn't get that one.
I thought you were Bruce Pearl when you walked in.
I got a brighter one. That's the night he comes to board meeting.
He was asking me, did that coat button on the right side?
It goes both ways. One way or wear it.
Myra, I don't want to embarrass you, but come up here and shake all the board's hand one final time. Myra, on behalf of the Hoover School Board, we really, really, really appreciate everything that you have done and look forward to your replacement. Mr. Hewlin, I know it's going to miss you a lot. Next, we have several contracts for support services to consider. Dr. Mayor is at a conference. Melody Green will take any questions. I think we covered most everything in our work session. Are there any additional questions for Ms. Green? If not, do I have a motion to approve these contracts?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The service contracts are approved. The business items are before you. Any questions for Ms. Ante? If not, do I have a motion to approve the business actions?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The business actions are approved. We have the recommendation from the superintendent to approve a bid for healthcare education simulators. Again, we covered details about this in our work session. Do I have a motion to approve this bid?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. I'm sorry. Anyone opposed?
Opposed.
Let the record state that Mr. Presley is opposed to the bid for healthcare education simulators. The majority of the board is in favor of the recommendation for the superintendent, so the bid is approved. We now must consider a textbook recommendation. Do I have a motion to approve this recommendation?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The textbook recommendation is approved. At this time, we have information reports. Mr. Craig?
Quick update, the short summer, there's a lot of floors being stripped and refinished. The roofing project at Trace Crossings is substantially complete. Those folks got in there and got out as soon as the summer started. Deer Valley's gonna have AC down for a period of time. They're replacing the cooling tower. We've got some various other mechanical upgrades going on that we are scrambling to get done in time for school starts. So, remember kind of the projects we approved towards the end of, back in mid-spring maybe. Those are all in full swing, or it's set up the project. I think Ms. Barber, they have some items some finish up items, but for the most part, the new roof is on, and I think Ms. Barber's floor has been refinished at the next school at Trace Crossings.
No area.
No area yet? You're getting you're part of the mechanical upgrade too?
We kept your next.
is there any new business? Anyone on the board, anything new?
I appreciate Dan Fulton from inviting David Faulkner and us to go around. I have invited for August, District 56 representative. I believe Hoover is made up of at least four. Is that four? And four or five different representatives from different sections of Hoover. And as far as senators in Montgomery, two or three. I think maybe two or three. So it's important, especially when decisions are made in Montgomery, that we have folks that we actually know. Paul came to pretty much everything we had going on, and it'll be good to see that continue to take place as time progresses.
Everybody vote tomorrow.
Any other new business? Do we have any public participation tonight? No public participation.
I just want to make one comment. I did notify Mr. DeMarco several times by Facebook that we were meeting. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it, Mr. Murphy. But I was pleased he was able to come by, whatever.
I think we ought to adjourn before John Leiter enters the room.
Yeah. I know, I saw.
Wait. I would love to congratulate Barry's team on making fourth in the nation in their competition last month.
The science team, yes.
That's awesome.
Robotics,
No, not robotics.
It wasn't robotics.
What Mr. Robbins thought, Dr. Robbins told me it was.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson, for including an article on that.
Yes, it was lovely.
A week ago, I believe, last week.
Mr. Lotto, we're glad you could join us. We're almost adjourned.
Perfect time.
Anything else before we dismiss? Our next board meeting will be August the 4th at 2014. Real quick, do y'all want to go back to a 4 o'clock?
The council meeting.
Were we a little bit rushed tonight? Okay.
Well, okay, this is good consideration.
See what you got on the agenda before you go.
You know, we had the thing, our, involved to the thing to do for Coach Miles afterwards.
For her retirement party. Yes. Okay, so we're going back to 4 o'clock.
Well, you consider.
Or you want to wait and see what the
You can
agenda?
consider as well.
Hour and a half to sit around smiling at each other.
Okay.
I can think of something to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Mr. Craig, will you just kind of, after the agenda's put together?
We're going 4 or 4.
Well, let's look at the agenda and see. It's a lot of, things are a little bit slow in the summertime. So we'll make that decision if it's going to be 4 or 4:30, and it will obviously be announced properly. If nothing else, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for coming.